Hello, everybody. I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. And, so this is probably what you think of when you think of donuts. I mean, you may think of, in particular, a chocolate frosted or a glazed or even a jelly, but odds are this picture right here is what you're thinking of. One or more of those items. So, and most of us probably don't tend to think that much more beyond it because donuts, while a piece of Americana, really are not the most prepossessing of pastries. They're not exciting. They're not fabulous. They're not exotic, at least to those of us in North America. Um, I wouldn't know about other parts of the world. As a Canadian, of course, home of the greatest number of donut shops per capita in the world, thank you very much. Donuts are not something that I or many people tend to think about very much. So it means that this book, The Donut Book, is one of those things that you look at it and you think, why? I mean, I'm not surprised that somebody's written a book about donuts because, first of all, somebody's written a book about everything, which is kind of like that internet, what is it, Rule 34, if you can imagine it. Somebody's written the pairing in fan fiction, or written the smut in fan fiction. I don't really know. That's one of those things that I just never tripped over. Um, but yeah, somebody's written a book about donuts. And, they call it The Whole Story in Words, Pictures, and Outrageous Tales. The tales aren't that outrageous. The pictures are intriguing. You will be seeing some of them shortly. But it's interesting because it is in some ways a history of America as told through the lens of donuts. We get histories told through the lens of feminism, through the lens of social activism, through the lens of formalist analysis, through the lens of great historical figures. History is told through a lot of different lenses, and donuts provide yet another lens. But this book is very, very American centric. Um, and oddly Jewish centric, actually. So the author, Sally Levitt Steinberg, America's Donut Princess, is the daughter of the man who made this Mayflower Donuts. Yes, donuts used to be spelled that way. Actually, I don't completely know for certain. I've heard at times that the origin of the word donut was in fact a doughnut, Nought, as in knots and crosses, as in zeros, as in it is a zero made of dough, and it just kind of gradually got co-opted and Americanized until it was spelled as the much simpler DONUT that we now use today. Unless, of course, we are English, in which case we still frequently use the older spelling because the English maintain the standard of the English language or something to that effect. Mayflower Donuts was considered one of the flagships, one of the creators of the current American place of donuts in American society. They were one of the donut shops that, like Krispy Kreme, had a machine in the window, and that machine would make donuts, and people would stand in front of the machine and stare at it, hypnotized by this amazing machine. And the name of the machine was the Wonderful Almost Human Automatic Donut Machine. So, when you're reading this book, part of this book is the memoirs about the author's grandfather, Adolf Levitt, who invented the donut machine. Well, According to this book, he hired an engineer and worked with an engineer to design the donut machine, to invent it, but he was the one who patented it. In any event, part of this is her own family memoir. It's not a personal memoir, but the first chapter of this book really tells the story of her family and what they did and how donuts made the family. This is a book that is chock full of stuff in relation to donuts. There's a lot of stuff about philosophy in relation to donuts. You have that old saw, as you ramble on through life, brother, whatever be your goal, keep your eye upon the donut and not upon the hole. Very cute. But the thing is that, I mean, that's, that's like the optimist's creed. And the idea is simple and a fundamental philosophical concept. But she also talks about, but there are other things, like economists who determine that sizes of donut holes vary based on, to some extent, apparently vary based on some extent to how well the economy was doing. I'm not entirely certain whether this picture demonstrates that adequately, but she claimed that people were saying that. This just seems to demonstrate that they made smaller and smaller holes so as to make the donuts seem, bigger, but who knows? The thing about donuts, though, is that donuts are consistently used as metaphors. They're used as metaphors in topological sciences, an area of math which studies shape and form and the basic shapes of the universe. And donuts are considered one of the fundamental, or rather, the donut shape, that sort of circle with a hole in the middle that's round all the way round on all the bits of it. It's seen as a sort of fundamental shape of the universe. And it's been used as a metaphor to describe things because it's such a convenient metaphor when you want to describe things that are that shape. It's not that it isn't a shape that is uncommon in nature or uncommon in the world. We have rings of all kinds out in the world, but when you describe the donut, it has a particular emphasis of roundness that is useful for philosophical things. She talks on one significant page of this is a book with a lot of text in it. It's a reader's book as much as a book full of pictures. She talks on one page about the Ouroboros, the snake that's eating its own tail. There's discussions of famous people. On the bottom right there is Stan the Donut Man, who was a famous person in relation to donuts, that he went on the front lines of the Second World War and gave people donuts and offered all kinds of help and assistance and emotional support to the troops. The picture on the top there is of a plaque commemorating the extremely apocryphal story of the man who invented the donut hole, supposedly by taking a pastry and slamming it onto the wheel of onto the one of the wheels of his ship, and creating a hole in it so that he would be able to keep his donut in one piece. So the story, of course, is that this man named Captain Gregory apparently did this. The plaque reads, "The inventor of the hole in the donut, Captain Hanson Crockett Gregory, born Clam Cove, Maine, 1832, died Quincy, Massachusetts, 1921. How true this is, the author isn't sure, but she says that Her attempts to track down the veracity of the story, which led her down a tremendous rabbit hole involving a man who refused to answer any of her questions, proved to her that doing research on donuts was not quite the same as researching how endangered the Komodo dragon is. There's discussion of the use of donuts in art. The ones on the right are Chinese jewelry boxes from the, I don't know how QIN is supposed to be pronounced in various Chinese dialects. I've given up because I think that there are too many people involved in the transliteration process. And on the right, Bluff, 2002, is a painting by an artist who, among other things, paints donuts. And she considers it part of her oeuvre to paint donuts because she just thinks that they are fascinating and exciting, and that donuts in close-up provide, Emily Eveleth, if anyone is wondering, that they provide an interesting look into shape and form and color. Because, I mean, you look at jelly donuts like that, in that close-up, in oil on canvas, that sort of soft fuzziness that you get. And it's a very interesting and intriguing series of shapes and collection of colors, and it looks vaguely obscene, which I believe was the point of what she was doing. The book then shifts gears by the end of it to discussing modern donuts, modern purveyors of donuts, people doing things with donuts that haven't been done before. In this case, I had some trouble with my scanner, but you can see that Krispy Kreme has created the last word in wedding cakes, that they made a stack of donuts into a sort of a wedding cake, which is a variant on the wedding cupcake display, which it's certainly personal and in some ways preferable to the traditional wedding cake because, of course, when you have little individual pieces, you can make sure that everybody gets one and gets a decently even piece, and the cake doesn't wind up looking horrifyingly mauled by the end. She talks about not just Krispy Kreme, but about Coffee Ann from Westport, Connecticut, which was supported greatly by President Clinton when he was in office. McDonald's Donuts. She talks about the orchards of Conklin Hill, which has a proprietary cider donut, apple cider donut. She talks about malasadas, which are, malasadas. She talks about a lot of fried pastries from the world over, about beignets, malasadas, loukoumades from Greece, and talks about the ubiquity, the cultural ubiquity that the small round fried pastry has worldwide, about the fact that you find archaeological sites where there are images of what appear to be small round fried pastries with a hole in the middle. It's not a surprise in any way, shape, or form that the donut is a thing that has existed throughout the ages, because as soon as you have flour, water, eggs, yeast, and honey, and the ability to deep fry it, you have donuts. She finishes up the book on Krispy Kreme, talking about where Krispy Kreme is and their place today, or at least today at the time of publication of this book, which was 2004. And I'm running out of time, so let's just move on to the back cover with its pictures of her grandfather, some random bits and pieces all over, and a picture of Stan Laurel of Laurel and Hardy holding a donut. The recipes in this book are interesting. They range from new age, new fancy ones to recipes from the 1800s, and they all look interesting because they're all donuts. And I think it's an interesting look at American history. So I'll see you all next week.